Masechet Megillah Daf 18a1. Yesterday we were talking about a very interesting thing. We were talking about the order of the Amidah. So we had the order, whether it was at first you're going to do Birkat Avot, then after Avot Givurot, Kiddusha, then after it says Bina. We went to Teshuvah. From Teshuvah we didn't say Virafalo because Virafalo there meant, right, it was the spiritual and not physical. So after the Teshuvah went Selicha, after Selicha went Refaenu, we continue going. And then we went to that, where do we see the Mitromemet Kanam, Yerushalayim Shlema, Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim, Yishlayu Evaich. The Kevin Shanivnet Yerushalayim, once Yerushalayim is built, so then David HaMelech will come, which means Mashiach ben David will come. Shlema, it says in a pasuk, Achar Yashuvu ben Yisrael Vikshu et Hashem Elokehem, Ve David Malkam. Okay, fine. Vekevan Sheba David Ba'atat Tefillah. Once comes David HaMelech, and he's going to have the Mashiach, we're going to have everything. What's going to happen afterwards? We're going to have Tefillah. Why are we going to have Tefillah? Because that's why we say Retzeh. Retzeh is the Korbanot and everything. Once we have David HaMelech, which is the Mashiach ben David, we're going to come, we're going to have Korbanot, we're going to have the Bet HaMikdash. Shneimar, but it says in a pasuk, Va'aviotim el al kodeshi, I'm going to bring them to my holy mountain, and I'm going to be very rejoiced with them in the house of my Tefillah. So that's why we say it's Tzemach David and Birkat Shomea Tefillah. But Kevin Shabbat Tefillah, once comes Shomea Tefillah, which is going to be the Shomea Tefillah, which is Shema Kolenu, Bat Avodah, then it's going to come the Avodah and the Bet HaMikdash. So it's all in order, right? First we have Yerushalayim. After Yerushalayim, it's going to be built, which is Tishkom Torah Yerushalayim. You're going to have Ben David, which is the Tzemach David Dechamerat Tzmiach. After Ben David, you're going to have Tefillah. So you're going to have Shomea Tefillah, and after Tefillah, you're going to have the Avodah of the Korbanot. Okay. Okay. So Shenemar, how do we know? Because it says in the pasuk, "Olotehem v'zibchehem leratzon hamizbechi." What does that mean? The korban olots and the korban zivachim, right? That means basically all the types of different sacrifices, right? They're going to be leratzon al mizbechi. They're going to be with goodwill on top of my mizbeach. Ve'kevan shebat avodah. Once we have avodah, which is retzeh, bat todah. Now it's going to come thanks. We're going to give thanksgiving. Thank you, Hashem. Shneimar, zoveach todah yechavadadni. What does that mean? Which means that after you're already bringing a korban, you have to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because there's no such thing as a korban without thanking Hashem. Very important. That's Rashi. Okay. Umar Ra'u Lomar Birkat Kohanim Achar Hodah. So again, we went in order. We went through the Birkot Avot, Bakashot, and now we're going through Hoda'ah. So the question is, why is it that we do Birkat Kohanim after Hoda'ah? We just said thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hatov Shemicha Luchan Leodot, and we said Modim and everything that you want, and now we're doing Birkat Kohanim. Why do we do that? So it says in a pasuk, it says in a pasuk, Vayisa Aaron et yadav el ha'am vevarechem, vayered me'asot hachata ve'olah ve'ashlamim, which means Aharon, right? That means just like Aharon, he did Birkat Kohanim close to when he was going down. That's what he's saying. Before he's going down from the Mizbeach, right? He's doing the Birkat Kohanim. So too, you're almost finishing the Amidah. Now you're going to do Birkat Kohanim. Because there it says it. He's doing Birkat Kohanim. He's picking up his hands to the nation. And he gave them beracha. And then it says that he went down from his Mizbeach. So first of all, you do Birkat Kohanim, and then you finish the Amidah. So right before the finishing of the Amidah, you do Birkat Kohanim. That's why you're doing it towards the end of the Amidah. So says the Gemara, fine, but Ema Kodem Avodah. Why don't you say that it's before the Avodah? Right? Why does it have to be after the Avodah? Maybe it's before the Avodah. So he comes and he says, Lo sal kadaitach. We're not going to hold like that. Why? He comes and he says like this, Lo sal kadaitach. He says, the Chtiv says in a pasuk, Vayered me'asot hachatat. What does that mean, Vayered me'asot hachatat? It says he's going down from doing the chatat. Right? So he comes and he says, right, Miktiv la'asot. Does it say that he's going down to do the chatat? Ela me'asot, from doing the chatat. So the fact that he's actually saying from doing the chatat, first he did the korbanot, and then afterwards he did the korbanim. Because he already did the korban. It's not that he's going down to do it. He's already done it. So for first you do the avodah, and after the avodah, you're coming and you're going to do the korbanim. So says the Gemara, fine. V'leimra achar avodah. So why don't you do it after retzeh, before modim? Because the avodah is retzeh. Correct? After the avodah comes thanking. Thank you is modim. So why don't we do it after the avodah, but before modim? So says the Gemara, lo saltadaita pasuk zoveach todah. So therefore you have to give hoda'ah immediately after the avodah. So you cannot have avodah, birkat kohanim, which is going to be like the hefsek, and then todah. You have to have avodah, todah, and then afterwards the birkat kohanim. Okay, fine. So the Gemara is now going to ask what many times the Gemara asks in many different places. My chazit samachta hai, semucha hai. You have two different pesukim. One pasuk is teaching you that you should have the avodah and then hoda'ah, and another pasuk is teaching you that you have birkat kohanim right after the hoda'ah. So the question is, why are you relying upon one more than the other? If you remember, we asked the exact same question by Vishav Rafalo. We said, and then we went and we brought another pasuk that right after teshuvah should come silicha. So he says first you do silicha and then you do refuah. So the Gemara there asked the exact same question. Why are you basing yourself on this pasuk more than the other pasuk? You have two pasukim. One pasuk teaches you should do the immediately right after the avodah, hoda'ah. Another pasuk teaching you immediately after avodah, birkat kohanim. So why did you decide, right, that this one is stronger? That you should first do avodah and then thank you, and then birkat kohanim. Why did you decide that? So says the Gemara, mishtabra shavodah ve'odah achad amintav. He says it's just a svara. What is the svara? The svara is that hoda'ah is also avodah. Meaning part of the service is to say thank you. Birkat kohanim is nothing to do with the service. Birkat kohanim, we're getting a special kohen, we're getting a special bracha from the kohen. So therefore, because of that, it's much more logical to say that you're going to put the two together, which is like avodah, which is avodah and hoda'ah, service and thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before the birkat kohanim. That's much more logical. Okay? I can hear you. Umar Ra'ul Omar Sim Shalom Achar birkat kohanim. One more time, we have Ritzeh, we have which is the avodah, we have modim, which is hodah and todah. Remember that's the Rav Hutner brings down that milashon of modim is also milehodot and also hodat baldin. Hodat baldin means that you acknowledge what you're receiving, and lehodot that you are actually thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because in order to thank you have to acknowledge that which you received beforehand. Yeah, right. And now after that we have birkat kohanim. We have something which is called birkat kohanim. Now the Gemara is going to say, why is after birkat kohanim we do sim shalom? Why do we do shalom right after birkat kohanim? So even before we're going to continue, what would you tell me? Right? For a very simple reason.
What is it?
Why do we do sim shalom right after birkat kohanim? So what would you tell me? So what is the reason why we say sim shalom right after birkat kohanim? Right? What does that mean? The kohanim, they are doing the mitzvot that they were commanded, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make a bracha to them. Bracha de HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shalom. The bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shalom. Meaning, if you're going to ask somebody, what is the biggest bracha? Shalom. Shneimar says in a pasuk, Hashem yivarech et amo v'shalom. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bless the Jewish nation with peace. So the fact that he's coming in, he's going to give us, we do birkat kohanim, which means the kohanim are doing birkat kohanim, right? But we do birkat kohanim, and then afterwards, just like the birkat kohanim, they are blessing Israel. So too, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bless Israel. And what is the biggest blessing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us? Shalom. So says the Gemara. Okay, now that we just mentioned the entire seder of the brachot of the Amidah. Okay, so now we're going to try to go back to who was the one that instituted the Amidah. Okay, because again, one more time, we just went through the entire order of the Amidah. We started with brachot, birkat avot, gevurot, kedusha. The Gemara did not bring down why did we do each one for. Meaning, if you remember, we gave an entire shiur. The birkat avot was of Nagen Abraham Avinu. Yitzchak was gvurot. Right? Yaakov Avinu was akel kadosh. Right? And then we continue going. Okay, so even though we're mentioning all these things, we're bringing the order of the Amidah. Now the Gemara is going to say, 1 second. If you just told me now that there were 120 elders, and a lot of them were even Nevi'im, because remember, part of them were Nevi'im, they were the ones that instituted Amidah, the 18 brachot ala seder. So Shimon Pekuli, mais did. So what did Shimon and Pekuli do? We already did that. Right? You understand? Which means that if we already spoke about something, and then afterwards somebody comes and he says something, and you say, chazak u'ruch. We already said it. So okay, so very nice, but we already did that. Been there, done that. So he says, my his deed does not mean that he was the one that was misader that he was the one that organized it. Ela shachum bechazar v'sidrun. They forgot it, and he brought it back in. Just like we learned about Mansepach and all those things, you remember in Daf Yomi, which means that there's such a concept that sometimes they forgot certain concepts. It was already there. And all of a sudden somebody comes and they remind everyone, say, it's true, you're right. I remember that. They completely forgot about it, right? So therefore, since they forgot that he brought it back in, that's why it says Shimon Pekuli, he's did it, but it's not about she was misader it. It was already somebody that pre-did it already. You understand that he already organized it beforehand. But says the Gemara, after the Anshe Knesset comes, and they were the ones that instituted the 18 blessings, you're not allowed as an often kavua to come and to add on to anything that which the Anshe Knesset they instituted, and therefore you're not allowed to add anything. It says Bilazar, what does it mean in the pasuk? Who's going to praise, right? The gvurot of Hashem. Yashmiya kol tilato, he's going to let be heard all his praises. Lemina el lemalel gvurot Hashem. Who is the one that is fitting to give the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Lemi sheyachol lashmiya kol tilato. Somebody that could come and give all his praises. Now you're not allowed to do it, right? Because who's the one that could actually do that? It's basically impossible, right? Because basically you're going to come and you're going to say, okay, this is also brought down in Yalkut Shimoni. The Yalkut Shimoni says, Amar Rabbi Berachia, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeDavid, Kales oti ech shata mevakesh, v'ani mochel lecha biknuscha. You could praise me however you want, and I'm going to forgive you. She'en adam yachol limtzo echad mikam minei shevach shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because a person cannot come and find so much, which means like this. Imagine right now you're going to go to the king, and you're going to say, right, the king, your highness, you're so compassionate, and you're so this, and you're so that. Afterwards, the king is going to say, by the way, you forgot that I'm humble, and you forgot that I'm this, and you forgot that I'm that, and you forgot I'm this, and you keep on forgetting. So actually, you thought that you were giving a kavod, and actually you are not giving a kavod. You're lacking, right? So therefore, who's going to add on something? So that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told David HaMelech, you could praise me however you want, and I'm going to forgive you for it. Now you're going to say, what? Ribbono shel olam, I'm going to praise you, then you have to forgive me for praising you. And it says yes, because be'emet, you're not going to be able to say everything. It's just impossible, right? To come and to mention all the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amar Rabba Barachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabba Barachana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Hamsaper b'shvacho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu yoter midai ne'ekal min ha'olam. If somebody's going to come and he's going to be mentioning the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu too much, what's going to happen? He says what's going to happen is he's going to be uprooted from the world, which means he's going to die early, or he's going to die a mita meshuna. Mita meshuna means we're strange death. Okay, Shneimar says in a pasuk, "Haisupar lo ki adaber imamar ish ki yevula." What does that mean? They are doresh in the pasuk, right? Are you going to come and say all the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? When I'm going to come and mention so many shevach, for sure not. So the person is going to do that. He's going to be yevula. He's going to be nivla. He's going to be swallowed into the world. Okay. Also, Darash Rabbi Yehuda ish kvar giboreya. Also, Rabbi Yehuda ish kvar giboreya came and he expounded. And somebody says ish kvar gibor chayim. My dichtiv. What does it mean in the pasuk? Right when it says over here, lecha dumiyah tehila. What does that mean, lecha dumiyah tehila? Which means the dumiyah, the quietness, being quiet, being quiet, is actually a tehila. It's actually good for a person, right? So he says, sama de kula, right, mashtuka. The best of all the samamanim is always shtika, which means the shtika is the best in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because if you cannot do it properly, it's better that you don't do it at all. Right? If you cannot, better shtika. Sometimes people come and they want to say, and they don't realize that by saying, they put their foot in it. They do it even worse. Right? What did Esther do? She comes and she puts a trap for Haman. Haman is always going to be there. She knows all you need is somebody to be there all the time. Boom. He's going to be polet something. He's going to say something that he shouldn't have said. And boom. What was starting the downfall of Haman? Right? When he comes and he starts telling the king that he wants the crown that the king was inaugurated with. And all of a sudden, the face of Achashverosh changes. Why? Achashverosh knew at that moment, that's it. This guy wants the kingdom. Right? Why? Because shtika. Shtika means shtok. Yeah? As the Gemara, Kiata Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came to Babel, he said, Amri b'ma'arava, they say in Eretz Yisrael, Milah besela, nashtuka betrein. If you have to pay for every word that you would say, you should pay a sela. But if you have to pay to keep quiet, you would pay double. What does it mean pay double? How much? 2 times. Why? Because at the end of the day, what you're supposed to do is, right, is that you have to, it's worth it. Meaning shtika is worth double than speaking. Sometimes people, they come and they think, do you know there were many stories with big tzaddikim, right? I've seen it, right? There was a video with Rav Chaim Kanievsky and Rav Eliashiv, right? They're both sitting down and they don't speak. And you're thinking, you know, like, it's father-in-law and son-in-law. You understand? You know, father-in-law, son-in-law, yeah. You know, the shver, the thing is very shver, you know, whatever. What's going on? No, for them, it was very simple. Each one was thinking, what am I going to speak about? If I'm going to say this, he already knows what I'm talking about. The other one, the same thing. And then, you know, for them, it's like, what are we going to say? You understand? That means one, because they thought of every single word before it came out of their mouth. And therefore, for them, right, they're saying, if I have to pay, right, I'm going to pay. Imagine right now we say that in the shiur, right? We're going to put a pot in the middle of the table over there. Anybody that opens up their mouth, $10 into the pot. Yeah, we're going to become rich. I think just on that we could have a huge.
We have a new building soon.
A new building. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem. So what happens? Is, imagine, right? You're going to do that, right? So he comes and he says, right? Says the Gemara, Kira'a al pe lo yatsa. If you read the Megillah bal pe, off by heart, so you started. You just why it was bal pe? Says the Gemara, Menala, and how do we know these words? Rava says, Atia zechira. It's a gzera shava. Zechira. Remember, gzera shava could only be done by your rabbi, which means you have a masoret tradition from your rabbi to his rabbi to continue going up. So zechira. Ktivatam, it's written in the Megillat Esther to do with Purim v'yamim ha'ele niskarim, that it's going to be mentioned. Ktivatam, and it's written by Parashat Amalek, ketov zot zikaron, right? Basefer. You have to write down. So zechira is talking about malehala basefer, just like over there, it has to be done in a sefer, right? Afkam basefer. So to here, it has to be the mitzvah Megillah has to be in a sefer, and therefore you have to read it from a sefer. It cannot be, right? Just right. So the Gemara is going to ask, whoever told you that zechira means kriya, that you're reading it. Maybe it's just iyun, meaning you could read it by heart. But when you want to come and you want to be me'ayen in the Megillah, some people do like to do iyun. So you come, open up a Megillah, and start reading inside. But iyun, there you do, but reading it, you can read it however you want. Says the Gemara, lo sakada. No, don't think about that. Why? The Tanya was we learned in a Braita zachor, right? Zachor et asher asalecha Amalek. Remember that Amalek and Purim are very intertwined, right? They're always together. So it says zachor. What does it mean zachor? You have to remember that which Amalek did to you. Yachol balev. I would have thought to say that's in your heart, right? Keshu omer lo tishchach. So when he already says don't forget it, hare shichat alev amur. The shikha is already shichat alev. So zachor is a positive, right? Shamor is a negative. Zachor v'shamor b'dibur echad. Right? What does that mean? We have positive commandments on Shabbat. We have negative commandments on Shabbat. Zachor is a positive. Shamor is a negative. So when it says shamor, watch out, do not do something, that's already in your heart. So when it says zachor, zachor cannot be shamor, it cannot be in your heart. So mani mekayim zachor. Zachor means bapeh. Whenever it says zachor, eser zechirot. Eser zechirot is you're saying it with your mouth. You're coming, or shesh zechirot. It all depends on, right? So therefore, it's you're saying it with your mouth. Okay, fine. Next, the Gemara says, "Kirat targum lo yetza." If you went and you read it with a targum, you're not going to read sechuvah. Targum means in the translation. You have to read it b'ashurit in Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh. So says the Gemara, what's the case exactly? If you're going to tell me it's written in the Hebrew, and then you came and you started translating it in whether it's Aramit or whatever it is, right? So then he says, right, Hainu Balpeh. So that is Balpeh. Because at the end of the day, that is Balpeh. What is Balpeh? You're reading it by heart. So you're reading Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh, and you're reading Bahava, right, B'yomei Achashverosh. So that's the Targum. So that means you're reading it balpeh because it's not written that in the Megillah. You're just translating. So that is balpeh. So says the Gemara, what are we talking about? Tichtiva targum, v'kal targum. No, you wrote it in targum. Meaning, let's say you wrote it in English and you're reading it in English. So you're not reading it balpeh. You're not reading it by heart. You're reading it in that language. Aval korinot al-loziot la'az, but you're allowed to read it in somebody that speaks la'az to that person in la'az. So says the Gemara, that you just said that if you read it in any language, you're not going to be tzechovah. So what's going on? You just told me that if you're going to read it in another language, you're not going to be tzechovah. Then you just told me that if you're going to read it la'loazit belaz, right? That means a person that speaks la'az, you're going to tell it to him in la'az, you're going to be tzechovah. So it's a contradiction. So says the Gemara, Rav and Shmuel both said, belaz yevani. Belaz doesn't mean belaz normal. Belaz means in Yevanit, only in Greek. Because if you remember, we learned in the Mishnah above that Rashbag said that when the Sfarim are written in any language, it's only Lashon HaKodesh or Yevanit. So Yevanit was the only one because of the story of Talmai Melech and everything else, and also because of the Pasuk. What was the Pasuk? Yaft Elohim liyefet, yishkon ba'ol Hashem. What does that mean? The beauty, yofito shel Yefet, the beauty of Yefet is going to be in the Ol Hashem, is going to be in the Ohel, which is the Torah, the Talmud Torah, right? The Ohel, right? Yaakov Yishoalim, right? Of Shem. So therefore, you see that the beauty of Yefet, what's the beauty of Yefet? Yavan, the Greek, was the beauty of Yefet. That's going to be in Ol Hashem. So only Greek is going to be permitted. So says the Gemara, hey Chidami, what's the case though? If you're going to tell me that it's written in Ashurit and they are reading it in Yevanit, again, you have the same question that we asked before. It's off by heart because you're reading it in Hebrew and I'm translating it in, meaning I'm reading it out simultaneously in Greek. So that even though I'm allowed because of the Greek, but I'm reading it by heart. So you have a technical problem. I'm reading it by heart. So Amar Rabbi Yacha, Amar Rabbi Lazar, says Rabbi Yacha Rabbi Lazar, sheketuva belaz Yevanit. No, it's written in Yevanit and you're reading it in Yevanit. So if it's written in Yevanit and also you're reading it in Yevanit, you're okay. Okay? Very good. Says the Gemara, we're continuing now that we just mentioned Rabbi Yacha in the name of Rabbi Lazar, right? We're going to continue another memra in his name. Remember, the order of the Gemara is many times when you come and you bring down a rabbi, so you say, this guy, yeah, he also said this. You remember, even though it has nothing to do with what we spoke about before. That's just the order of the Gemara. So, Rabbi Yacha, Rabbi Lazar, minayin shekaro HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yaakov El. Right, because we weren't speaking about Yaakov Avinu, right? So he says, Nor HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We were speaking about the Megillah and how do you read it? But all of a sudden he comes and he says, how do you know that Yaakov Avinu was called by HaKadosh Baruch Hu El? So it says Shneimar, but it says in a pasuk after Yaakov Avinu came from the house of Lavan, it says Vayatzav Sham Mizbeach Vayikra Lo El Elohei Yisrael, which means the pirush of the pasuk is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu called Yaakov El. So Hashem called Yaakov El. Right? They actually say it. Israel, right? Is Sar El, the name of Hashem. But if you're going to tell me that the Mizbeach, right? If you're going to tell me now that the Mizbeach, right, was the Yaakov called El, so Vayikra lo Yaakov Mibaele. It should have said, right? Who was the one that read that? It was to the Mizbeach. So therefore he comes and he says, okay, even though you did find it in other places the same thing, but he's saying that's what it should have been written down. So he says, Vayikra lo Yaakov El. So it's really, they called it Yaakov. They called it El, not to the Mizbeach. So what does that mean? So he comes and he says, right? Umikra, who was the one that called Yaakov El? Elohei Israel. So Elohei Israel, which is the God of Israel, called Yaakov Avinu El. Okay, that's what the Rav Acha bar Yaakov comes and he says. Okay, fine. Now we're going to go back to that which we mentioned about reading the Megillah in Yevanit. So that was just like a side point. Remember, just like Derech Hagav, we mentioned the name of this rabbi, so we mentioned what he actually said. Okay, so it says now the Gemara, Meitevei comes and asks the Bnei Yeshiva, they come and they ask, Kira'ah Giftit or Ivrit, or Alamit, right? Madit Yevanit, Lo Yatsa. There's a Braita. The Braita here says that if you're going to read it in Giftit is Mitzrayim, right? Egyptian. Ivrit, Evrenar, Alamit, Lashon of Elam.
What is this Ivrit?
Which one?
What is this Ivrit?
It says here that these are Anumot, Be'ever and Anara Shanish Nar Perat. Okay?
So it's the kind of
the country, of a language of a country. Yeah?
No, I'm saying it's like it's Egyptian.
Madit is Madain Yevanit. So now here it's written Mefurash. It added in Yevanit to this entire list. So remember, we had Egyptian, right? Ivrit, Elamit, Madit, and all of a sudden it said there Yevanit. So it added Yevanit in the same cholent, in the same pot. Okay, and then what happened? It says here Lo Yatsa, right? So 1 second. You just told me that you're going to be Yitzhak Chovah if you do it in Yevanit. Here it's written Mefurash and Abraita. You're not Yitzhak Chovah if you do it in Yevanit. So it says the Gemara, Halo Damya Ela Leha. It says, no, the Braita is referring to that if you read it in Giftit la Giftim, Ivrit la Ivrim, Elamit la Elamim, Yivanit la Yivanim Yatsa. It says, no, really, Be'emet, it all depends. You have to read it in the same language to that person. So if you remember when we brought down, the Biur Halacha actually brings this down. I don't remember now if it's in Siman Kuf Bet, but the Biur Halacha brings down that which we say you're allowed to pray in another language, it's only you're allowed to pray in the language that you understand. So, for example, let's say you understand Spanish, yeah, and you're going to read it in Chinese. So you're allowed to pray b'chol lashon, but it doesn't help you. You have to pray, and then there's another question. There's another question: does it have to be the language of the country as well? So that's the whole question over there. Which means, let's say I understand French, yeah, but I go to Russia, and I come and I start saying Amidah in French. Right, in French, but the nobody understands French in Russia. So what happens? So there's a whole question also the Biur Halacha. It has to be also the language of the country.
But if it is the language, if you're straight.
Biur Halacha in Siman Samech Samech Bet, where it says Yachol likrota bechol lashon. We're talking about Kriyat Shema. You can read it in whichever language that you want. So it says here, I'm b'misham b'ram mashkada v'vodeh b'tfilah v'yikadavno kiddush. Okay, now he comes and he says like this. In the middle of everything, he says, ודע דנראה לי בפשיטות, דאותן הדברים נאמנים בכל לשון, דווקא אם אנשי אותו המדינה מדברים כך. אבל אם אנשי המדינה אינם יכולים לדבר זה הלשון, ורק הוא ועוד איזה אנשים יחידים יודעים זה הלשון, זה לא נחשב לשון כלל למדינה זו, שאינה מכירה בזו הלשון. תביט שם הלשון הקודש הוא לשון מצד העצם. מה שאין כן שהלשון איננו כי מצד הסכם המדינה. וכיוון שאין אנשי המדינה הזו מכירים לשון זה, לא נקרא לשון כלל. אחי, יפסו, רב ושמואל, so according to שיטת רב ושמואל, מה הם מוקים למצניתי בלעז יוונית? Why are you telling me that we're talking about יוונית? Look מה בכל so then it's any language. אלא מצניתי כברייתא, but our Mishnah is like the ברייתא, which means that you cannot say that we're talking about דווקא יוונית, but rather we're talking about ללועזית בלעז. So he says what? That which Rav and Shmuel said it was Stam said. Rav Shmuel Damitavayu la zivani la kol kasher. According to everybody, it's going to be kosher if they're doing it la zivani. Okay, that means basically if you're going to do it la zivani, for sure you're going to be Yitzhak Chovah. According to everybody, because if you remember, it was a machloket. Rashbag only said that it was only in that case. Yeah, so he comes and he says like this. He says, right? He comes and he says like this. V'haktani yivanit levanim in. So it's only Rashba Yevanit, Yevanim, yes, but everybody know, right? So he says, which just means it's not going to be kasher, so it's not like what you just said before. So Inu Damar, he holds like Rashbag. That's what he's mentioned before from the beginning. That means basically we're only allowing Yevanit, not any other language. Okay? So says the Gemara, so just say the halacha like Rashbag. Tell me that the halacha like Rashbag, that you're only allowed to write in Yevanit, other than Lashon HaKodesh. So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me then that the halacha is like Rashbag, Havamina, I would have had a Havamina, one of these words, Shar Sefarim only by other Sefarim. Aval Megilah Daf, but to do with the Megilah that it's written Kichtavam, Eimalo, I would have thought that you can't do that. So Kamash Malan comes to teach you that there's no obligation to do it in Lashon HaKodesh, but you could do it in Yevani, it's still going to be kosher. Meaning that if I would have just said halacha Rashbag, right, I would have only said that's in other Sefarim. But not a Megilah Daf. Megilah Daf, because of the word Kichtavam, it has to be exactly the way that it's written in Ashurit. Kamashmalan, that even the Megillah is going to be kosher in Yevanit. Okay, Nekuda. We're by the two dots. Everyone, please put on your seatbelts. Somebody that speaks Loazit, so he hears it in Ashurit. So imagine you only understand French, Spanish, English, Chinese, and then what happens is that you hear it Lashon HaKodesh. Now you don't understand a word of Lashon HaKodesh, but you hear it in Lashon HaKodesh. So he said Yatsa, Behalo Yada. He doesn't know what they're saying. So why is he Yitzhak Chuvah? He doesn't understand a word. So says the Gemara, so why are you going so far? What about women and Ami'aretz? Women and Ami'aretz, they also don't understand a word that's going on. And still what's going to happen, right? They're still going to be Yitzhak Chuvah. So just like women and Ami'aretz are going to be Yitzhak Chuvah, so too you hear. If you hear it in Hebrew, even though you don't understand a word of Lashon HaKodesh, you're going to be Yitzhak Chuvah. So Matkif Ravina is going to ask the following question. He says, why are you going so far for the Amei Haaretz and women and all these things? Right? He says, do we know what that is? Like, why? It's in the middle of the Megillah. After they came and they hung Haman, Esther Malka asked from Achashverosh to come and to annul, right, the decree of Haman. So Achashverosh comes and he says, we cannot take back any letter that was signed by the king. Meaning, if you have a letter that's signed by the king, Kaddish, you can't take it back. So he says, but Mordechai wrote new ones, and then he sent them out and he signed them. So it says that they sent them in the hands of the Ratzim Basusim, the ones that run on the horses, Rochvei Rechesh, which they ride on chariots, HaChashteranim Bnei Ramachim. He says, what does that mean? He says, what is that exactly? Right? We know who they are. You know what's good. Ela mitzvat kriya u'persum enisa. You have a mitzvah of kriya, reading it, and it's lefarsem et hanes. You're going to publicize the miracle. Hachenami, so to hear the same thing. Mitzvah kriya, persum enisa. What do you care if you understand every word of the Megillah or not? You don't know who these people are, the Shteranim Bnei Ramachim. So the fact that you don't know doesn't mean that now you're not using the Megillah. So the same thing. You're reading it and you're doing Pirsum Enisa. The exact same thing over here. Okay? Without any problem. Fine. Says the Gemara. Okay? Kara Sirugin Yatsa. If you read it, Sirugin, right, you're going to be Tzachuvah. Because remember, you're reading. So since you're the one that's reading it, even though you're dozing off every once in a while, as long as you wake up again and you're going to continue from where you left off, you're going to be Tzachuvah. So says the Gemara, Lo havuya de Rabbanan, my Sirugin. Do you know that the rabbis didn't know what Sirugin meant? What does it mean Sirugin? If they read it Sirugin. Shamua la'amta de Rebbe, they heard the maid servant of Rebbe. By the way, this is a concept that we see in Rashi when it says Yafes Sichatan shel Avdei Avot, Yutem Toratan shel Banim. Right, when Rashi says about the story of Eliezer, that it repeated itself twice in the Torah, that look how beautiful it is, the Avdei Avot, the servants of the Avot HaKadoshim, even more than the Torah of Banim. Tefillin, in one pasuk, it teaches you all Yuchot Tefillin, right? But to do with the story of Eliezer and Avraham, it didn't even say it once, it says it twice. So Rashi already brings on this yesod. So here they learned from the maidservant of Rebbe an explanation in the Gemara of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said Sirugin. They didn't know what Sirugin was. They heard the maidservant of Rebbe, de ka'amra lehu l'Rabbanan, that she was saying to the rabbis, that people were coming in groups, like little by little. So she went and she told them, why are you coming in? Sirugin, you should come in one shot. Right? So the rabbis understood from there that Sirugin means that instead of reading it in one shot, it was a little bit, paseh, a little bit, paseh, a little bit. Yeah? The pasek is okay today? Yeah? That's what it was. Okay? So you had a little bit, stop, a little bit, stop. She went and said, when are you guys going to go? This is what she gave musar to the rabbis. So the fact that she told them, until when are you guys going to do Sirugin? So what happened? They learned what the explanation of Sirugin was. The rabbis did not know what it says in the Mishnah, Chalog Legot. Right? There it's talking about, it says over here, it's like a yerek, it's a vegetable that is brought down in the Mishnah and Shavi'it. To do a Shavi'it, and it's counted with all the foods which bring Tumah. Okay, so therefore it says, Chalog Legot. They heard the maidservant of Rebbe. She saw someone that he was coming and he was separating, right? Parpechine, right? A certain vegetable which is called parpechine. It's Aravi. Parpechine. Okay? So he says, so when are you going to come and be mefazer this chalog lecha? So therefore, the fact that she went and she called it chalog lecha, they understood that the Mishnah, when it said chalog logot, it meant parpechine. I don't know if the art school tells you what it is in English, but what does it say?
No translation. No translation.
Okay, perfect. So it says the Gemara. Okay, so that was laglegot. Lo Avu Yehuda Rabbanan, the rabbis did not know what a salsalat to Mecca. Shemul Lamatid Rebbe Davar Amra Lehu Gavra Davar Me'apech B'Mazir. There was somebody that was coming, he was being Me'apech or Me'chlik, right, with his hair. So he was playing around with his hair. So Amrale, she told him, Ad Matay Eta Mesalsel B'Sarecha. Says, what are you going to be Mesalsel B'Sarot? By the way, and even in modern Hebrew, this is. But Mesalsel is the same thing that you're playing around with your hair. So it's Lisalsel, right? So Lo Avu Yehuda Rabbanan. We didn't know the explanation of the pasuk in Tehillim where it says you have to throw on HaKadosh Baruch Hu whatever you have and he's going to give you parnasah. What is Yavecha? I was going behind together with this Arab merchant, the Kadarina tuna, right? And I had a very heavy load. So he comes and he told me, take whatever your burden is and throw it on my camel. So he learned from there the fact that he said ashlech yavach, and it means a burden. So therefore, he learned it from the Arab merchants. Okay, lo havu Yehuda Rabbanan. The rabbis didn't know what it meant in the pasuk. And this is also modern Hebrew today, also matateh. So Shemua the matateh Rebbe Dava Amra Leo Chaverta. They heard that the maidservant of Rebbe told her friend, Shekule tatita v'tateh beti. Take the matateh, right, and broom the floor, sweep the floor. So what happened? So they understood that it's a matateh. They understood that it's a broom. Okay, that's how they learned. So basically, we were just learning about different things again. We went on a tangent, but it had to do with the different things that we learned, whether it's from the maidservant, the majority was from the maidservant Rebbe, but we were learning about different things that were written in Mishnayot or things like that. We learned it from how the maidservant of Rebbe came and she taught. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in Braita. Krat Sirugin Yatsa. So we learned in the Braita that also, if you read it, Sirugin, you're going to be Tzei Chova. Yudchet Amubet. Sirusin Lo Yatsa. But if you do it backwards, Sirusin is from the back to the front. Right? Lo yatsa. You're not going to be Tzei Chova. Rabbi Mona, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, Kara besirugin, af besirugin, im shaha kedei ligmor et kula, chozer lerosh. If you went and you waited until you were able to do the entire thing, so then you have to go back to the beginning. Meaning, if you made a hefsek, so the hefsek was the exact same amount of time that you would have finished the entire Megillah, that's it. You have to go back to the beginning of the Megillah. Yeah? Okay, Amar Rav Yosef says of Yosef, Halakha Rabbi Mona Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Says Halakha like Mona that he said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda that if you did it sirugin, if you waited until the entire time to finish the entire thing, you're going to be chozer lerosh. Amalei Abai Rav Yosef says about Rav Yosef, Kedeli Gmor et Kula. When it says you're going to finish the entire thing, Mehecha dekai leseifa. What does it mean? The hefsek. The hefsek has to be. Let's say I'm 2 minutes before the end of the Megillah, so the hefsek is 2 minutes, or is it from the beginning until the end of the Megillah? Because when it says ligmor et kula, to finish the entire thing. To finish the entire thing from where you are, or to finish the entire thing from the beginning until the end. How long does it take to read the Megillah? 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So, yeah, so it's from the beginning, right, until the end. Yeah. Amalei comes and he says, from the beginning until the end. The in came as if no, then you're going to give your words to Shiunin. So it has to be that you had enough time from the beginning until the end. So if you made a hefsek between from the beginning until the end, that's already considered hefsek. Amar Rabbi Abba, says Rabbi Abba, name of Rabbi Abba, name of Rabbi Lachak Rabbi Mona, like Rabbi Mona, that if you made a hefsek from the beginning until the end, it's going to be hefsek. Shmuel says, "En Lachak Rabbi Mona." The Lachak is not like Rabbi Mona. The Surah Matnach in the Yeshiva of Surah, they taught Rabbi Abba, name of Rabbi Abba, that it's going to be posek like Rabbi Mona and Shmuel paskin like Chachamim, and in Pumpadita they taught the other way around. Amar Rav, Halacha is like Rabbi Mona. Shmuel Amar not the Halacha is like Rabbi Mona. Rav Bevai matni ipchar. Rav Bevai taught the opposite way around. He flipped it. Rav Amar en Halacha Rabbi Mona. Shmuel Amar Halacha Rabbi Mona. So basically, there's a machloket. What exactly? Who was Halacha? Was it like Rabbi Mona or not? Machloket Rav and Shmuel, but each time we had opposite opinions. Who said what? Did Rav say that Halacha is like Rabbi Mona and Shmuel say no, or the opposite? Shmuel said Halacha is like Rabbi Mona and Rav said no. So we kept on going back and forth. Amar Rav Yosef says, Yosef, nekot de Rav Bevai biyadacha. It's better that you take Rav Bevai, because Rav Bevai, he taught the opposite of what we just learned. So he says Shmuel was the one, is dechai shliachida. Shmuel is the one that always suspects for a yachid, right? If he's going to be, if the Rabbim are coming to be makel, and the yachid is machmid, he's going to be choshesh le machmid, to the yachid. It's as we learned in the Mishnah, shomeret yavam shekidesh achiv et achota. Imagine right now you have a woman, that she's shomeret yavam. What does shomeret yavam mean? Her husband died without children. So since the husband dies without children, the brother has to get married to her. That's called a yavam, yavama. Okay, so shomeret yavam. She's shomeret. She's waiting for the yavam. Now what happened was one of the brothers came and they got married to the sister of the shomeret yavam. Okay, mishum Rabbi Yehuda Mitera Omru. So the name of Rabbi Yehuda Mitera says, Omrim lo, they tell him, Hamten. Don't get married to her. Ad sheyaseh achicha gadol maaseh, until he does yibum. Right? And then he's going to take away the zikah that you have between Eshet and Met. Why? Because as long as the older brother did not do yibum or chalitza, all the brothers are prohibited in the sister of this woman, because it's ervat achot ishto, right? Which means, you understand what happened? One more time. You have an isur of ervat achot ishto. Okay, so now, in order to go away, to go out, what is ervat achot ishto? You're not allowed to live with your sister-in-law. Okay, it's an isur doraita, right? It's karet and everything. You're not allowed to be with your sister-in-law. Now the problem is like this: there's a whole bunch of boys. One boy dies without children. So now what do you have? You have a shomenet yavam. This woman has to get married to one of the brothers. Nobody got married to her yet. All of a sudden, one of the brothers comes and he gets engaged, or an engagement of the Torah, obviously, right? Of the sister. Now, 1 second. If he actually now lives with a sister, he's over on the isur doraita. Why? Because now he's getting married to a sister. He should, maybe he's also, so therefore they tell him, wait, do not do anything. Why? Let the other brother or any of the brothers, either they have to do the yibum and chalitza. Once they do the yibum and chalitza, now you're permitted, because 2 brothers are allowed to get married to 2 sisters. No, he cannot do the chalitza to her because he just got married to this girl, but he didn't finish the marriage. He didn't finish the marriage. No, you're not allowed to get married to 2 sisters. That was the entire question of Yaakov Avinu. How is Yaakov Avinu married to Rachel and Leah? And that's why the Rachel died before going into Eretz Yisrael, because it's a Yisur Doraita. You're not allowed to get married to 2 sisters.
But a woman can marry to 2 brothers. Because in
Shmuel says Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Metzera. So basically that means they tell them, do not do anything, do not do the Nisuin until your older brother comes and he does the Yibum of the Chalitza, and then it would take out the problem. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Hishvit ba'sofer otiyot o psukim. Imagine right now that there's a Megillah, which is psula. Why is it psula? It's missing, whether it's otiyot, words, or psukim, karan, akore, and he read it balpeh. Kemeturgeman am targem. Right? Just like the Meturgeman, which is coming and he's actually translating it, right? Rami balpeh, yatsa, he's going to be yatsa. So Meitve, we're going to ask the question, how could it be? If you read it balpeh, we said you're not yatsa. Imagine you had letters which are metushtashot, which are all like blurred out, or mikurot, or torn, right? Which means that it has like a psik in the middle. You could still see that it's shum. You could still see the image, the out form. It's going to be kosher, and if not, it's going to be tzura. So it says Imra, lakash, it's not a question. Here we're talking about bikula, right? And therefore, if it's not nishuma nikah, the Megillah is going to be psula, because we're talking about the everything, tushtasho bikula, and one of them is only talking about miksata, was only a little bit. So therefore, since it's only a little bit, the Megillah is still kosher as long as you could be mashlim balpeh, that which is chaser. Because as long as you could do it by heart, right? You know, balpeh, right? That which is lacking, it's going to be okay. So a person, if skipped out a pasuk, he cannot say, you know, I'm going to finish the entire thing and then I'm going to read that pasuk. He has to go from that pasuk onwards. Because if not, then it's backwards. So you have to do from that pasuk onwards. This actually happened last year, I remember. Somebody came in bidyuk after the first few psukim in the Megillah. What's he going to do? Here it says they even read until half. Lo Yomar, he's not going to say, you know what, I'm going to read this half now until the end, and afterwards I'm going to read the first half. You have to read it from the beginning until the end. That means if you came in and you missed, Kaddish, unless you catch up, right? Balpeh, right? I can hear you. Says the Gemara, if a person starts dozing off, he's going to be tzofah. What's the case of mitnamnem? Ravashi says, nim lo nim, tiv lo tiv, which means he's yashen v'enu yashen, he's sleeping but not sleeping, but he's awake and not awake. What does that mean? If you call him, he'll answer you. Right? You say, hey, he's going to answer you. Right? You call him his name. But he doesn't know how to answer you really be'emet sfara. You can ask him a question, he's not there. Say, I'm awake. Majority of the time when they say that, you start laughing. Why? Because you know that they're not awake. They're nim lo nim, tiv lo tiv. Right? But if you're going to remind him, he's going to remember. Says the Gemara, imagine right now you're writing the Megillah, or you're expounding upon the Megillah, or you're doing Haggah. Haggah means you're checking it over to make sure there's no mistakes. So if you had kavanah to read the Megillah, you're going to be sefra, but if not, it's not. Hechi dami, what's the case? Either come and say that if it's you're doing one pasuk, another pasuk, which means that the sofer is reading the Megillah one pasuk after another balpeh, and then he's writing it out, right? What do I care right now if he's going to have kavanah? It's alpehu. At the end of the day, it's alpeh. Right? At the end of the day, he's doing a balpeh. Because he's doing. He's writing it out. but that's alopeh. So he comes and he says, Ella dichtiv pesuka pesuka. He's writing one pasuk, and he's reading out the pasuk. That means after he already wrote the pasuk, he's reading the pasuk. Says the Gemara, Miyatzah is going to be Sefova. Says Halakha is Kidibra Omer Kula. Halakha is that somebody is going to say that the Chova is to read the entire Megillah. That says that it's only from Ish Yehudi. Meaning there's going to be a machloket from where do you have to read the Megillah? From Ish Yehudi, from Haman, from this. But according to everybody, it doesn't matter where you start reading the Megillah, you have to have it written from the beginning until the end. Ela de marchat Megillah kameh. He has the Megillah in front of him. He's reading the Megillah, pasuk pasuk, and then he's writing it down. So the fact that he's reading it from, it's not balpeh anymore. So Lema say Rav Chana. Why don't we say there's a proof? Rav Chana says Rav Chana Asul lichtov ot achat shelo min haktav. You're not allowed to write even one letter, not which is written down. Dilma di tramile tramuye. Why? Because maybe it's going to happen. Just said happen like that, which means that a person had a Megillah Kshera and he's copying it on the day of Purim. So therefore, the Tana is coming to teach you that even though Yikar Megamato is to write the Megillah, nevertheless, if he had Kavanah to be also Yitzhak Chuvah, he's going to be Yitzhak Chuvah, even though his Yikar Kavanah is to write it, but the fact that he's reading it, it's already going to be okay. Says the Gemara, Gufa, Amar Rechanam Yochanan, is Asur Lichtov Ot Achat Shelo Min Haktav. You're not allowed to write, not even one letter, that it's not from the Ktav. So maybe we're going to ask the question, Amar Shimon Lazar, Maseb Rabbi Meir Shalach Le'aber Ashana B'Asya. So he went to make a leap year in Asya. Okay, so he says here, Megillah. It was not Megillah. There was no Megillah there. So what did he do? Right? He says, Asya is Asia. He actually wrote it from his heart. Right? And he read it. Meaning that he did write the entire Megillah, Balpeh. He wrote it out, Balpeh. That was Rabbi Meir. Remember, Rabbi Meir was called a Sofer. Amar Rabbi Yehu says, Rabbi Yehu, Shana Rabbi Meir, Mekayim Be V'Hafafecha Yashru Negdecha. What does that mean? He comes and he says, by Rabbi Meir, it's written this pasuk, that basically that when your eyes are going to be looking so much, it's as if that they're looking properly. So what does that mean? These are divrei Torah. If you close your eyes for 1 second, they get forgotten from you. If a person doesn't continue learning and learning and learning, you close your eyes for 1 second, you already forgot. Why? It's so easy to forget. You shouldn't say, but by Rabbi Meir, it's always there in front of him. Why? Because that's what it means for him. It was mamash so barur, he could write it out without any problem. Okay, Rav Chasta found Rav Chananel that he was writing Sefarim in Lashon Kodesh, right, of Kitvei Kodesh, Shelo min haktav, not from the Ktav. He says that even though the entire Torah could be written by Yubal Peh, but the rabbi has already said it. So the fact that he wrote that the entire Torah could be written through your mouth, also by him it's going to be right to Rav Chananel. So he says that means Rabbi Meir Katav. So he says no. He says Shata Dachak Shane. That means Rabbi Meir was a special being, not because he knew it by Peh so well he was able to do it. Shata Dachak. There was no Megillah. If there's no Megillah, what do you want to do? You have to do it. So he wrote it by Peh, but not that if you want to, you can. That's what it is. So it says the Gemara, Abaye Shara Ledvei Barchavu. Abaye, he went and permitted to the house of Barchavu that they used to sell tefillin lemifcha tefillin zor shel miktav. That they were able to come and write tefillin zor not miktav. Kiman who's that go like? Ki other Tanya like this Tanya that says that we learned to write Rav Yirmiyah Amar Shem Rabbeinu and even Rabbeinu tefillin zor shel miktav and tzechot situ. Tefillin mezuzot you're allowed to write it balpeh, means you don't need to write it from the ktav, and also they don't need sirtut. The hilchata, but what is the halacha? Remember the sirtut is the lines, right? That you see in the Sifrei Torah things that. So he says the halacha is tefillin do not need sirtut. Mezuzot do need tzitut, but both of them, you could write it balpeh. My time I was reasoning, migras kreising. Why? But since it's so common in people's mouths, so therefore you're allowed to do it balpeh. Okay? If it's going to be written besam sikra, these are different types of inks. He's not going to be tzedachova. Sam is sama. Okay, it's like a goldish type of an ink. Sikra, Amar Rachana, Sikrata Shema. What does that mean? It's a tseva, right, which is like red. So that's also not good. Okay, kumus is Aramit koma, right, which is like a srafilan. It's like a type of a thing that comes sap of the tree. Okay, that they're writing. Kankantum yitzeta mudalef on the top. Kankantum is charta, which is like a black. Tishpachev ritzanim, which is of the tanners, right? Is going to be black. Diftera is klaf. The maliach, right? That they came and they malchut, or they salted it. The kamiach, and they actually put it in in kemach, right, in flour and water. Vela afitz, and it's not going to be afitz. So it says niyad is going to be machka. It's going to be like a type of a skin, okay, that they're going to do it. Fine. Then it just says we're going to go to the Mishnah. It just says, right, ad sheteheh ashketuva ashurit. What does it mean? It has to be written in ashurit. The things it says in pasuk kichtamam chizmanam. So the fact that it's written kichtamam chizmanam, it has to be written in ashurit and on the cloth. Ala sefer v'dio. Menalan, how do we know that it has to be written on parchment and with dio? Atya ktiva ktiva. It's zera shava. Ktiva achat shvetim v'tivkov v'ser makau ktiva tabenet shvetim v'yom elayim baruch mipiv yikra elai kol v'imay levani kutav ala sefer v'dio. So the fact that it's written right ktiva ktiva from Megilah Daf, so to here Megilah Esther, that it's written ktiva has to be written on a Megilah al-Klaf v'dio. Bezrat Hashem, we continue tonight.